Sorry about the the delay. I just had to get something straightened up here as far as my bid was concerned. I just wanted to ask you this. Good evening. How are each and every one of you tonight? Well, I'm as blessed can be, and between this week and the week after, I'm going to be doing a two-part series of messages, something every man and, of course, every woman should know. And that is, if whether you are married or if you're in a relationship or if you are on or if you're in the process of getting married or if you're in the process of getting involved with someone, like being in a relationship, this is where I'm going to be talking about domestic violence in the Bible. It's something nobody would ever want to hear, or, and it's also the subject nobody would ever want to talk about when absolutely this is something that we do need to hear and that we do need to talk about. So it's very important for you ladies, and that includes guys like me and a few others. It's very important, guys. You try to take note of it, word by word, understand things, piece by piece, because when you are, because by the time I get this done, then you'll thank me. But for now, let's get on with the message immediately. If you have your Bible or your Bible app, please mark some messages down. Write it down in your own words and tell me what you think. Anyway, the subject is domestic violence. That is narrowly defined as an act or threat, upon violence with somebody with whom the perpetrator is or has previously been in an intimate relationship. The phrase domestic violence often brings to mind the concept of the battered wife, or perhaps a married couple's verbal argument escalating into a physical assault. Even more to the fact of the story is domestic violence is also commonly linked to child abuse, related to child abuse, especially if the children are not physically injured. Watching or hearing a parent being abused can have severe psychological implications. Now, domestic violence is is about two things. The first of which is about power, and the second is control. Though the word violence has physical connotations, domestic violence or abuse can occur in non physical ways. For instance, abusers may manipulate their victims through emotional or economic means. Verbal abuse, and set between verbal and sexual abuse. There are other forms. A person of any age, gender, socio, socioeconomic class, educational level, or religion can be impacted by domestic violence. Domestic violence can be viewed in terms of cycle of violence. Tension builds, the victim attempts to retain the abuser, mollified when eventually an incident occurs. The abuser apologizes in an attempt to make it up to the victim, perhaps by promising it will never occur again, or for lavishing the victim with gifts. Then comes a period of calm before the tension begins to build again. The stages of this cycle may take only minutes or may develop over years. Without intervention, the periods of making up and calm frequently disappear. as I at least discuss it to all of you. Now, domestic violence is in stark opposition of God's plan for families. Genesis 1 and 2 depict marriage as a one flesh healthy relationship. Ephesians 5:21 talks about mental submission. If you have your Bible or Bible app, please mark these following scriptures down. They will help you. Ephesians 5:22-24 explains a wife's submissiveness to her husband, while verse 25-33 talk about a husband's self-sacrificial love for his wife. 1 Peter 3 verses 1-7 gives similar instructions. 1 Corinthians 7:4 says the wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. In the same way, the husband does not have any authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. In other words, the two belong to one another and are called to love one another as Christ loved us. That's the phrase we hear over and over again, like Christ loves the church. Marriage is an image of Christ and the church, while domestic violence, on the other hand, is a far cry from and is far away from the character of Jesus. Domestic violence involving children are also condemned by God. Psalm 127 verse 3 said, children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward for them. God entrusts parents with children, and those parents are to lovingly care for them and train them up. Ephesians 6:4 says, fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Now see also Colossians 3:21. Children are to obey their parents. Ephesians 6:1 verses 1-3. And discipline is important, but discipline is distinctly different from violence and abuse. Now, following God as well is also a variation, is also the same as following instructions involving serving others, not manipulate without manipulation nor controlling them. Jesus told his disciples in Matthew 20:26, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be the first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Now, his command to us is John 13:34, is to love one another. Simple as that. But Ephesians 5 verses 1-2 says, follow God's example. Therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. Children are called to sacrificially love others, especially those in their own families. Those who are currently live in a domestic violence situation ought to do everything possible to get out of safety. More often than not, the more dangerous time for a victim of domestic violence is when she or he leaves. Contacting the police may be in order, or there may be local resources available to help. Now, in the U.S. alone, the National Domestic Violence Hotline can help with information and resources. Their number is 1-800-799-7233. I'm going to give you the number right at the end of the series of messages. They could also be found at www.thehotline.org. Note, the computer use can be monitored, so only visit these websites if the abuser has no way of tracking your online activity. When domestic violence is ongoing, safety is the first step. That's right. Especially after victims who are physically safe and bodily wounds have healed, emotionally and psychologically scars run deep. Domestic violence can have severe spiritual implications as well. Victims may distrust God, but why would He allow such a thing to happen? Is He trustworthy? Does He really love me? Where was He when I was being abused? Walking through the healing process takes time. The emotional reaction to the situation must come. It is appropriate to express anger over the abuse. If we do not acknowledge the severity of the situation, and I'm talking about the anger, the confusion, the hurt, the shame, or whatever else we hear about, we cannot heal from it. Too often, victims are prematurely hurried into forgiveness. Ultimately, forgiveness is the number one thing that will set the victim free. When true forgiveness cannot be extended if the scars of the abuse are not first acknowledged and tolerated with. Victims of domestic violence will likely need the support of a well-trained Christian counselor to journey with them through the healing process, all right? And there's more. We shouldn't assume that abusers have no needs other than to stop abusing. There are very unresolved issues that have led them to become abusive. Because if an abuser is willing to admit his or her culpability and wants help, there is hope. Once again, Christian counseling can be of great value. Now, what I've said is what I said was completely understandable for all of you. Not an understatement, it is understandable. Each domestic violence story is different from the ones you hear before. The situations and people, especially those in real life, are so diverse that no one article can sufficiently handle the issue alone. However, generally speaking, marriage counseling is not an appropriate solution, at least not at all until an abuse has stopped. Both parties have undergone individual counseling and both parties request reconciliation. The same would be true for family therapy. Children should never be put into an abusive situation or be expected to remain in one while the abuser himself or herself learns about godly parenting. And finally, domestic violence hurts the heart of God. He is not unmoved by their victims, nor has He abandoned each other. His plan for human relationships, particularly those among family, is a beautiful depiction of who He is. Family is meant to reflect upon God's love. It saddens and hurts Him when a home turns into a place of pain. It's God's desire and His request for those involved with domestic violence, both victim and abusers, is healing and wholeness. So, as you can probably see, everything I have said to you, it was not an understatement about this topic I am talking about. Everything I've said was the absolute truth. If one, and having seen all these PSAs through various times in various countries, having to watch through all of those Well, they give me the answer to everything. If if either a lady, if a lady like the wife ends up in a situation where she can't get out of, and that is of all the abuse from her own husband, of, or let's just say, getting too volatile with words or phrases, also from a man, not to mention, all the yelling and the screaming and the fighting, not to mention, the rating from a man, then obviously, she is going, she is not going to be very, very, very happy, and that, the husband is going to have a heavy price to pay. And if a husband cannot get the wife out of the situation like that, especially when I'm talking about domestic violence, or when I would say rape, all those bad, condescending things, then she's going to make it even worse without getting professional help. And the same goes for guys too who have been in situations like this. So, if any of you, have been in a volatile situation like domestic violence, it is up to you, and it is up to you to call this number at 1-800-799-7233. That number again is 1-800-799-7233. That's the number to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Once you give them a call, they will they will give you all the answers you need. They will give you professional help. They will ask you some questions. They will also help you to get you out of the situation, where you couldn't avoid. Not to mention, you will also be getting the kind of counseling that almost everybody can get, because without the certain place, we would have not had anybody try to get the kind of treatment they can get. And what I find this very awesome is, once, once you go to a place, on which, you, will be, getting all the family help along with professional help, then, you will be talking to God 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, talking, and, right at the same time you'll be talking to your family. You have to let your family know. You have to apologize, and making sure, and not only that, you have to apologize in such a way it would never, ever, ever happen again. Then the next step is you have to talk to God in saying the same thing you said to your family, and ask them for forgiveness. It may you won't be forgiven right away, but like I said, over and over and over again, it takes time. Where to go from there? Find out how long, find out how long, it will take in order for the situation to go back to normal again. And then, right afterwards, you will become a totally different person. And believe me, it is tougher, but, you have to do it. And you have to, 100%. Now, I'm done with this message. For now, what I'm going to be talking about next month is, violence against women in the Bible. And in this one, I'm going to be talking about, how, women in the Bible, are justified for abusing and subjugating, woman, while while Bible readers have interpreted the ill treatment of that. Then I will also be covering the stories about the about a woman's main role in the house was to become wife and mother. Chances are, women, and of course, women are to, in order for a woman to rely and to be dependable on a man would first have to become trustworthy to a woman, and they must respect their own woman in any way before the guys would be in jeopardy, among many others. So make sure you come back next week when I will be talking about violence against women in the Bible, and this will be part 2. But for now, I really gotta go. Thank you for watching, and have a blessed night. Take care. Goodbye.